I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe and the murder trial for his alleged killer, Karen Reed. This case has a lot of witnesses, but no one who saw the alleged murder. And that's why the expert witnesses may be the key to this case. Here's the story. In the pre-dawn hours of a snowy January morning in 2022, the lifeless body of Boston police officer John O'Keefe was discovered face up in the front yard of 34 Fairview Road in Canton, Massachusetts. A dedicated cop and beloved uncle, O'Keefe's sudden violent death sent shockwaves through the community. His girlfriend, Karen Reed, a finance professor, was quickly cast from grieving partner to accused killer. Prosecutors claim she dropped him off at the home of a fellow officer after a night of drinking, then struck him with her SUV while backing up and left him to die in the cold. They point to broken taillight fragments, a cracked rear light on her vehicle, and chilling voicemails she left that night. But Reed's defense tells a very different, darker story of a brutal beating inside that house, a cover-up, and a law enforcement conspiracy to frame her. As the courtroom drama unfolds, the battle for the truth continues, and a community remains divided, searching for answers buried beneath the snow. Like I said off the top, this case, there are a lot of eyewitnesses, especially when when everything goes to 34 Fairview, which is where John O'Keefe is found. That night when he and Karen Reed pulled up in the SUV, a bunch of people saw a bunch of things, but no one saw the alleged murder. Take a listen to Jen McCabe testifying about what she saw and what she did.
I saw a dark SUV out front.
Did you know whose SUV that was?
I believed it was Karen's.
Could you see who was in it?
No.
You mentioned you had spoken to him about directions. Is that the last time you heard his voice?
Yes.
Did you ever reach out to John when you thought the car out front was the defendant's car with John in it? Did you ever reach out to him?
Yes, I did.
How did you reach out to him?
I texted him.
Do you remember what you were texting him?
The first time I said here.
What do you mean by here? Was that exclamation point?
Like here, question mark, because that's when I saw the car.
She saw the car. She's communicating with John O'Keefe. She spoke to him on the phone at one point. She's sending text messages. But she doesn't see what happens next. So she can't testify about that, which would be perhaps some of the most important testimony in this case. And all of this brings us to our first question, which is such a crucial question for this jury, a crucial question for this case. Where did John O'Keefe go when he stepped out of Karen Reed's SUV? Gets out of the SUV. We know he gets out of the SUV, but where does he go? Where does he go? Joining us to help answer this question, John DePietro, host and creator of Road Patrol Live, and Karen Reed supporter Kim Whalen, also known as Nurse Kim on YouTube and on TikTok. Great to have you both here. I want to do this. I want to play some expert testimony because I believe, for the prosecution at least, it's the experts who have to answer this question for the jury. Here's Ian Whiffen talking about this very issue, about where John O'Keefe goes after he gets out of the SUV on direct and on cross.
Where this car stops, or this phone stops at 12:24:33, how close is the phone to that flagpole?
I believe very close.
And do you ever see the car or the phone stop anywhere near that driveway?
No.
The larger white circle covers a substantial amount of the house at 34 Fairview, correct?
Correct.
The phone of John O'Keefe, according to this depiction, could be anywhere within the largest white circle, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so there's some conflict here with the circles, right? Small circles on direct, putting him near that flagpole. Large circle, cross-examination, yeah, could have gone in the house. So that doesn't really answer the question. John, is there any other evidence here that supports the prosecution theory that he did not enter the house, but he was at the flagpole?
Vinnie, as you know, I'm in that courtroom every day. I've seen you in that courtroom. In the first trial, there was a lot of confusion about what was going on in the house and all the different people testifying. But I'm telling you, in that courtroom, whatever happened, it happened out by that flagpole. Everything points to something outside that flagpole. They can't come up with a witness that puts them inside the house. They can't come up with any evidence. Although the defense did have, the wider circle, I believe the time would have been narrowed like 4 seconds. So I also just want to add that, as you know, the jury went out and saw this before Ian Whiffen, meaning 34 Fairview, before he testified. So I thought that was really smart by Hank Brennan prosecution, because it really drilled down for the jury that whatever happened, it happened outside by that flagpole.
Kim, from your perspective, looking at the big circle picture, right? And you've got the cell right. Yeah, it's possible. What's the other evidence that he was in the house?
Well, I think the other evidence he was in that house, Vinny, is that was the intention that evening, is they were going back to 34 Fairview to not be outside, but to rather go into the house for an after party. There also is compelling evidence from Ian Whiffen himself that there was that 36 steps and 82 feet, which in my summation would bring you directly to either the front door or the side breezeway front door. And I think he went right inside that house.
John, let's take a listen to Karen Reed outside of the courthouse talking about this very issue.
Do you think?
Did you see John go in the house?
I did.
You saw him go in the house?
I saw John go in the house.
Can you describe him going into the house? Which door and how and when?
No, I have though.
So, John, what are your thoughts? They're playing a lot of clips inside of that courtroom.
They are. And they're very effective, Vinny. These Karen clips, to me, it's the story of this trial, and it really undermines the defense. Now, the problem, when Karen Reed says that, it's very convincing, but the problem is there's other clips and interviews she's done where she says she didn't see him exactly go in, that he popped his head in, that she put her head down and was looking at the phone. If she had come out of the box in the very beginning of the interviews and was always insisting she saw him go in, I think it would have more credibility, but the other interviews that Karen Reed has done, that was really the first time we've heard her say that she actually saw him go inside that house.
Kim, I want to play for you something that you referenced already tonight, which is the 36 steps. Here's Ian Whiffen talking about where those 36 steps could have been.
Could it have been a straight line?
It could have been a straight
Could
line.
it have been somebody pacing?
It could have been.
Could it have been somebody moving and jumping?
Yes. Jumping, if they were jumping forward, essentially.
To me, this is a big deal, the 36 steps, Kim, and I'm trying to imagine the pacing, and I'm trying to imagine under what scenario that would come into play versus walking somewhere. What are your thoughts? Is it possible that he starts to walk in the house and then walks back towards the car?
I don't believe so, Vinny, personally. And I can't reconcile a pacing either, right? What would it make sense? We know it's cold. It is the start of a nor'easter, and we know that Officer John O'Keefe is not dressed for inclement weather. He is dressed in his hoodie, his short sleeve shirt, no hat, no mittens, no gloves, no scarf. And I'm thinking he's just trying to get where he's going from the vehicle directly into 34 Fairview.
Yeah, John, if you're counting steps from the SUV to the flagpole, it's like maybe 3 or 4 tops.
Yeah, we don't know. I thought the demonstration that you did, Vinny, when you guys were in Dedham, I thought that was pretty effective. I'm still not sure though that the steps coincides with when he was outside of the vehicle. I think that's still in dispute, that event could have happened as they were making their way to Fairview. But I want to go back to
wait. Hold on. Let's dive into that a little bit. So you're saying the steps could be recorded on Apple Health while he's in the car?
Well, I mean, that was falling in with the timeline, that as they were going up and down, that it could have actually been when he was riding in the car. I know also when you did the demonstration in Dedham, one of the times that the Apple Health didn't exactly even record that. So he definitely took some steps outside the car, but I think it's in dispute exactly how many took. But I come back to the GPS has him outside at that flagpole.
Yeah, I'm trying to put all the pieces together. They're not fitting exactly for me because I don't have, Kim, a clear understanding of the 36 steps. And you talk about the distance from the SUV to the home. Was it 65 feet going diagonal across that lawn, going from the flagpole going across? Because it's only 30 feet, the front yard. But if you go diagonal, I think it adds a few feet onto the trip. The only scenario I could think of where 36 steps and he doesn't go in the home is if he starts to go and then comes back, or if they're yelling at each other. But we have no witnesses who heard or saw any of that.
Correct. And I also think, Vinny, it's very imperative, just like Mr. DePietro said, that they had done the jury view of 34 Fairview before all of this testimony. And when you see how small that lawn, that property is, it is deceiving to the viewers at home if you've never been there. You know, I know, Mr. DePietro knows that it's such a short distance from that front door that, in my opinion, it's very possible.
All right, John DePietro, Kim Whalen are going to stick around for the rest of the show. Coming up next, we're going to bring in some of our own digital forensic experts to ask this question. What does the digital evidence prove about John O'Keefe's location?
Based on the totality of all of the information that we've described, my opinion is that the device never moved far away from the flagpole.
We want to understand the mindset behind your actions in this case.
I'm going to give you a new scoop.
What happened?
I did it.
Very funny, really. I laughed. You see me, I laugh.
I don't want any of this. You think you should get some kind of credit for not killing people?
Not at all, no.
You are a shrewd operator.
Interview with a Killer. Memorial Day Marathon. Starting Monday, 11:10 Central. Only on Court TV.
So when John got out of the car at Brian Albert's house, he took my full vodka soda, which is sitting in the cup holder.
So that's one of the many clips of Karen Reed doing media interviews that are being played for this jury inside the courtroom as evidence. Prosecutors believe it helps their case. That's why they're putting it in front of this jury. And there you had Karen Reed talking about John O'Keefe getting out of the car and taking her vodka soda with him. Very significant when it comes to some of the evidence of the glass that was found, and part of an explanation for some of the glass. Now, in trying to figure out what happens next, right? He gets out of the car. We all know that, right? Through circumstantial evidence, because he's not in the car, he's on the front yard, and we saw him get in the car. I get that. But where does he go next? How do you figure that out? Prosecutors, and in his opening statement, Hank Brennan was very clear about this. He wants to rely upon this digital evidence, which provides zero bias. It has no bias. The information is what it is. So here's his expert presenting some of that information relative to what was found on the cell phone and the apps of John O'Keefe.
Based on the location data, the health data, and the research that I did and the testing, I believe it is more likely that the device was in a vehicle traveling on a road going up an incline versus the location data being incorrect and the person being walking up physical stairs. Yes, around 12:31, 56 or 57 is the start of the health event, 36 steps.
How long? How many seconds does that phone move for?
20 seconds. Based on the totality of all of the information that we've described, my opinion is that the device never moved far away from the flagpole.
Okay. Important testimony. If the jury buys it, then it does tell the story and fill in the blanks for prosecutors. But that brings us to the next question in our investigation, which is about this digital evidence. What does the digital evidence prove about John O'Keefe's location? How precise is it? What does it tell us? What does it tell the jury? Still with us, John DePietro, host and creator of Road Patrol Live, and joining us, digital forensic investigator Matthew Maurice. Thank you. Matthew, let me begin with you. Location is so important in this case. I mean, you go a few yards in another direction, it's a whole different story. Here, we've seen this expert with his small circles and his large circles. His conclusion is that he's near the flagpole. How precise is this type of evidence? Why do we see different ranges of circles, and what are we to take away from it? What should we believe?
Well, Vinny, I think Ian explained during his testimony that the iPhone, as it is asked for location information by different apps, it depends on how accurate the information that the app needs is. And so you can have an app saying, hey, I just need to be able to tell what region you're in to determine what your weather is going to be. And that we don't need a high level of accuracy there. But if we're using something like Waze, that's been talked about a lot, the navigation app, we need much more precise information. And I think Ian did a good job of explaining that and showing that, you know, some of these circles are big, some of the accuracy is low when data is requested from the iPhone, when location's requested from the iPhone. But when we're talking about the Waze app and when we're talking about the high accuracy, those circles are small, and they seem to put John O'Keefe's phone right there by that flagpole, starting at about 12:25 and 30 seconds throughout the rest of the night.
So how comfortable are you? Because this is a murder case. I mean, it doesn't get more serious than this, right? How comfortable are you with that small circle versus the larger circle, which includes the house, which is where reasonable doubt lives in this case?
Well, as I look at those circles, the thing that stands out to me is there are some circles that are less accurate that take in the house, but for the most part, those circles are centered around that flagpole, and there's a lot of them throughout the night that don't cover the house. I think that makes me more comfortable as a digital forensics expert saying he seems to be outside near the flagpole and not moving around inside the house.
Now, let me ask you, John, and this is significant too, and this was a little surprising to me. The testimony about the flight climbs, on the health data and the steps, you believe could be within the vehicle?
It seems to be. I mean, it definitely could be, and you heard Ian Whiffen saying that. Otherwise, it just doesn't match up that then he's out of the vehicle doing all this walking around, where instead it seems like they're arriving there. Vinny, I think this is key, though, and when the Reed defense, they get their chance, they have to do something to try to get him in that house, because what I find so damaging here is it's an iPhone, it's a cell phone, it's so relatable to the jury. People can go on their phone and they'd find my iPhone. It's not like a foreign instrument. So what I'm saying is it's to me, it's easy to understand for the jury that they're tracking him with the phone. The Reed defense, when they get up and they present their case, they've got to find a way to try to get him inside the house.
I agree 1,000%. Let me ask you, though, Matthew, about this Apple Health data. We never get witnesses from Apple. I mean, I think that's on purpose by Apple, right? But what are your thoughts about being in a car, driving up an incline, and the Apple Health recording it as climbing flights of stairs?
Well, I just have to go back, Vinny, to the testimony. Ian Whiffen testified he personally did testing with the iPhone, where he held the iPhone in his hand. He drove up an incline. I think at one point he said he drove up the same hill 10 times, and every time it was recording that he was climbing flights of stairs, even though he wasn't.
Yeah, I did the same thing with two different phones, and it didn't do that. And I had mine in my hand. My partner had his, because he was driving, it was set, and neither one of us got that recording. How about steps? Do you believe steps can be recorded while driving?
It's difficult to rely on steps from an iPhone as anything definitive. I think they can be recorded when they're driving. I think they can be recorded when you're doing other things. Ian said, and that's my experience, the iPhone is pretty good at being able to tell when you are walking versus when you are just sitting there bouncing your phone up and down or shaking it or something like that. But I have seen steps recorded when no steps were being taken, so I know it happens.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Matthew. As an expert, right? This is what you do. You know the stuff I don't. How, because you were pretty confident with very confident with the small circle data. How would you compare your confidence in flight climbs being recorded in a drive on Apple Health? Are you as confident that that is what happened here, as opposed to comparing the level of confidence you have in the location data?
No, I'm less confident. I think what Ian's testimony goes to is to saying that's a possibility. It is possible that the phone could record a flight climb while you're driving, but I don't think he would say, and I certainly would not say, that I'm confident that that's what happened here.
All right. Our guests are staying with us. We've got more to get to. Up next, what are the key timestamps for prosecutors? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the tragic death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe. Both the prosecution and defense are trying to prove their cases, and both are relying upon some digital evidence and experts to explain it. Here's the story. It was a snowy January night in Canton, Massachusetts, when the lives of Boston police officer John O'Keefe and his girlfriend Karen Reed collided with fate. The couple had been drinking, first at a bar, then continuing into the early morning hours. Tensions simmered beneath the surface as alcohol flowed freely. At some point that night, prosecutors allege Karen dropped John off at 34 Fairview Road, a home belonging to a fellow police officer. But he never made it inside. Hours later, his lifeless body was discovered in the snow-covered yard, battered and bruised, eyes swollen shut, cuts on his arm, and blood beneath his head. The storm had buried secrets and possibly evidence. Investigators turned to Karen's SUV, pointing to a shattered taillight and forensic traces that allegedly matched John's injuries. They say the vehicle was the weapon, her recklessness, the motive. But Karen Reed insists she's being framed, the victim of a cover-up. What truly happened that icy night? The question now sits heavy in a courtroom and in the hearts of a watching nation. This retrial is very different, and the focus of this retrial so far, very different. If you remember the first trial, all we were talking about was Trooper Michael Proctor, and here in the second trial, there's been a lot more focus on the digital evidence and the timeline. And that's what the new prosecutor, the special prosecutor, Hank Brennan, talked about in his opening statement, and that's kind of where we are in this case. And that brings us, I want you to take a listen to this, because I think the defense agrees that this is really important and really significant. Take a listen to Robert Alessi here, speaking to the judge outside the presence of the jury.
It is 12:32:16. And Your Honor may recall that the seconds, literally seconds, matter in the analysis of many factors.
Literally seconds matter. And that's about the digital evidence and the timeline, and it brings us to the next question in our investigation. What are the key timestamps for prosecutors? This digital evidence with timestamps saying exactly what time certain things are happening. Well, what are the key ones for prosecutors here? Back with me to help answer this question, John DePietro, host and creator of Road Patrol Live, and Karen Reed supporter Kim Whalen, also known as Nurse Kim on YouTube and TikTok. Okay, I want to put this graphic up on the screen because I think it kind of gives us the big picture on some of these timestamps for prosecutors in their case. Let's take a look. What's in white is the evidence coming from John O'Keefe's cell phone. What is in yellow is the so-called text stream data coming from the Lexus, Karen Reed's SUV. So these times we're going to talk about these times. Some will be from the car, that's in yellow, others from the phone, that is in white. Let's begin with the 3 flights that are climbed. The start of this health event, Apple Health event, 12/22/14, ending at 12/24/37. That's coming from John O'Keefe's phone. Kim, this is such a big deal, this Apple Health data and the way it fits into this timestamp. What are your thoughts about the significance here?
Yeah, Vinny, I think that the 3 flights of stairs are 3 flights of stairs. I do not believe that it was a phone, especially an iPhone, going up and down over a not hilly hill of Cedar Crest or Fairview Road. And it is, in my opinion, stairs. Where are stairs? Not in a vehicle. And where was the location in which John and Karen were headed? 34 Fairview. So in my opinion, there was movement by Officer John O'Keefe at that time.
Now, John, I want to talk about the 3-point turn. This is coming from the text stream data and from the cell phone. But what's interesting, right, is that they are out of sync. They're not in sync when you look at the raw data. From your perspective, what do you think the significance of this event, the 3-point turn, and the fact that the times don't line up between the cell phone and the text stream data from the car?
Well, Vinny, we've learned that not all clocks match up, and John O'Keefe's phone didn't match up with Karen Reed's, Lexus as far as that clock. And a lot of times they use an example. Maybe your microwave oven clock doesn't match up exactly. Military, they used to say, let's all synchronize our watches. I think this was huge for the defense when it just didn't seem to match up. But I think, and I give credit, Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan, I think that the expert witness, I think he did a pretty good job matching that up at the 3-point turn. And then when you see the two of them together, I found it was very easy for the jury to follow, because in that, diagram, in the presentation, you're seeing that it's Karen Reed is the Lexus time, and then John O'Keefe, he's actually the iPhone. It's incredible how they match it up perfectly.
Kim, what's interesting, when they're floating, or what was the word, clock drifting the time, they drift it forward. They drift the car forward to match it up. But if you had drifted the cell phone backwards, you get a completely different timeline. What are your thoughts about the fact that the times don't line up and that now they do line up?
Yeah, I find it awfully convenient, Vinny, that now there is a change. And it has always been to make timelines work in this case, whether it is a timeline that is made from witnesses and now timelines that are corroborated by experts and only in new reports. So the time drift seems to be a very convenient new finding.
Let's get to the next one, the backing up maneuver. And we've got that at 12/31/43. This is in yellow, so it's coming from the Lexus. John DePietro, this is the big one, right? This is the big one. This is the one indicating as close to the time of the alleged murder as prosecutors have.
Well, I'll say again, we'll wait to see how the Reed defense will combat it. But as far as the prosecution, if you're trying to make an argument that she backed up and then that's when the event happened, and then you have this sync up with the phone, I thought that was very compelling testimony in the courtroom. And again, with the way they do the map, it almost looks like a video game. Like it's so easy to follow. I think this is a big problem for the defense.
And Kim, as we go back to that timeline, the next thing I want to talk about is the 36 steps, right? So we've got that and a window of time for that. But on the initial graph, before you drift the clock, the 36 steps are happening after the vehicle is backed up, right? So if the clock is not drifted, then it doesn't work. It just doesn't work because he's walking after Karen Reed has finished backing up her SUV.
Yeah, Vinny, that is, again, a convenient new truth. And I also want to just remind us that at 12:32, we have this alleged collision occur, right? This is when the accident would have happened based upon what a 3-point turn 8 minutes prior, not from the Lexus tech stream data, because there was nothing indicated in Karen's actual vehicle that was recovered by Mass State Police or any expert. But we also have the large elephant in the room, Vinny, that Karen Reed was connected back to One Meadows Wi-Fi at 12:36. And that time frame doesn't add up that she could have struck Officer John O'Keefe and made it back to the house in that amount of time.
Yeah, that's one problem here, isn't it? Potentially for prosecutors, John, if you're shifting the stuff forward, it looks better on the screen this way, but if you're shifting everything forward, now all of a sudden there's less time for Karen Reed to get from 34 Fairview to One Meadows.
Well, again, I believe, first of all, very light traffic on the road. We have to imagine that she was very angry. So if you go the exact speed limit, then maybe it's a problem. But if you travel and someone's angry and maybe a little bit of the, pedal to the metal, start to go 40, 45, even 50, you can make it within the window, especially the element of light traffic that time of night.
Light traffic, but some weather, right, Kim? There was some weather that night. I mean, that's one of the biggest parts of this story.
Absolutely, Vinny. And when you have to start changing or not going by other data like Waze that says it would be 6 minutes to get from 34 Fairview back to One Meadows, now we're making it a whole different set of circumstances that Karen Reed would need to engage in for her to get back there in 3.5 minutes. I just think sometimes the easiest answer is it doesn't fit.
And finally, I want to take a look at one more aspect of the timeline, which is the phone unlocking at 12:32:04, then the phone locking at 12:32:09. And John, for prosecutors, this is the last, I guess they would argue, proof of life of John O'Keefe from their perspective.
Yes, and I think, Vinny, I think the prosecution, I was in court when they presented that, they feel pretty confident that it's a compelling story, that as her car backs up, then, within seconds, his phone stops moving and then there's no more activity on it. I think prosecution feels pretty good about the way that lines up.
All right, John DePietro, Road Patrol Live, thank you so much. Kim Whalen's going to stick around. When we come back, how do we know which timestamps are accurate?
The time of that event with the clock variance adjusted is 12:32:04 to between 12:32:04 and 12:32:12.
It was the biggest story in the world.
People saw the facts differently.
Somebody manufactured evidence in this case.
This was kind of a crazy spectacle.
This case is a circus.
He was an icon. They are in for the fight of their lives. Everybody thinks you're guilty.
Trial and error. Why did O.J. win? Marathon begins Saturday morning, 9/8 Central. Only on Court TV.
When you apply that variance between the Lexus clock and Mr. O'Keefe's phone, what is the time of that event?
The time of that event with the clock variance adjusted is 12:32:04 to between 12:32:04 and 12:32:12.
The clock variance, such a big part of the prosecution's case. They also called it clock drifting, where they're shifting the times in one of the digital devices that we're talking about in this case. Take a listen. That's Shannon Burgess, important expert for prosecutors, came under some heavy cross-examination about his credentials. But take a listen to what he says here about adjusting the times to make everything sync up.
If we think back to the last slide, we've identified the three-point turn event in both the data sets. So now if we want to adjust one clock to the other, we can do that. And doing that, we've identified that the variance is between 21 and 29 seconds. So we would need to adjust the Lexus clock forward by 21 to 29 seconds to synchronize it with the iPhone data.
Okay, let's go back to my timeline so you understand what he's saying and I understand what he's saying. So again, yellow is the Lexus data, white is the phone data, and he talked about what they did with the Lexus data. They chose, in order to sync things up, they chose to take the Lexus data in the yellow, keep an eye on it, and slide it forward. Take a look. And then everything's in sync. Okay, I understand what they did. What I don't understand is why they chose to slide it forward and not slide the white backwards. Because two things out of sync, you can sync them up two ways. You can go like this, or you can go like this. Or you can meet in the middle. Which brings us to the next question in our investigation. And it's important. I don't understand it. How do we know which timestamps are accurate? It seemed that Shannon Burgess said, okay, we're going to go by the phone data. And it just so happens when they do that, it lines up nicely for prosecutors. All right, joining us to help answer all of this, Karen Reed supporter Kim Whalen, also known as Nurse Kim on YouTube and TikTok. Be sure to check out those streams. And digital forensic investigator Matthew Maurice. Matthew, can you answer that question for us? When you have two things that are out of sync and you're putting them in sync, how do you know which one to choose? How do you know whether to slide the yellow forward or yellow forward or slide the white backwards to get them in sync?
Well, Vinny, I can't answer your question. I don't know why they chose to do it this way, but I'm going to make an educated guess. iPhones by default sync to something called the Apple Time Server, which keeps the iPhone in sync with the correct time. And I didn't hear them say, you can turn that off, you can change that and set the time manually. I didn't hear anyone say that had happened, and that is the default behavior of the iPhone. My guess is that they assumed that the iPhone time was probably correct, and that's why they shifted the Lexus time forward.
And so I wanted to play something else for you. This was from the last trial in 2024, and I learned something I didn't know, and I want your expert opinion about what it means. This is the cross-examination of Nicholas Guarino by Dave Yannetti. He's the defense attorney cross-examining a trooper who's an expert for prosecutors in the last trial about the clocks inside an iPhone.
Are you aware that an app on an iPhone may pull data by choosing from 3 different clocks when it timestamps location data?
Yes.
What are those 3 separate clocks?
Depends on the program. It could be the Mac Absolute Time. It could be the Unix Epoch Time. And sorry, there's like 2 others. I don't remember them all off the top of my head.
Okay, Matthew, all right. they could pull time from different places. Are all those times in sync, or do we choose one? What does that mean, and can that impact something like this case where the timeline, every second counts?
I agree that every second counts. And what the witness was describing that I just heard from that other trial, I think, is not different clocks on an iPhone, but different ways of storing time on an iPhone. Those Unix Epoch and Mac OS X time and those actually don't refer to different clocks on the iPhone. They refer to different ways of storing time in iPhone databases. So I don't think that applies to a change in clock here. That's my reaction to hearing that testimony now.
Kim, in the first trial, I remember the defense expert made a big deal about this, and it made everything kind of mushy in my head. It's tough for us to follow this, right? Those of us who aren't experts like Matthew, right? Trying to follow this very detailed type of evidence. But I remember that Green, the defense expert, talking about these different times, and somehow there was some possibility of shifting. Do you remember that, Kim, as well? That there was some, and I think we may end up hearing some of this in the defense case, that there are different ways to tell time, so it's not black and white, at least from this defense expert.
Yeah, Vinny, I wish I did remember that, but I am Nurse Kim, not forensic tech expert Kim. And this has always been, for me, a battle of the experts. Either you are going to get in line with the defense and what they present to you, or the jury will follow with what the Commonwealth says, or will both of them cancel out and have it be, this is too complex for us to really follow it, and just go with medical evidence and accident reconstruction?
Let me ask you a big picture question, and I saved this for the end, Matthew. So in your line of business, right, this digital forensic expertise in trying to figure out what these devices are saying, is it black and white? Is it what it is? Or is there room for interpretation and room for equally qualified experts to look at data and come to different conclusions?
Well, Vinny, for digital forensic experts, it's supposed to be about the cold, hard facts, the cold, hard data. But we have seen already in this trial, from the beginning of Ian Whiffen's testimony, there was a problem with this internet search and digital forensics experts thinking that a timestamp meant something that it didn't mean. And Mr. Whiffen having to go back and do some testing and do some research and say, no, that's not what it means. This is what it means. I think there is room for experts to come in and disagree and do their own research about what these timestamps mean and how these timelines should be shifted, if at all.
Thank you so much. Matthew Maurice and Kim Whalen, Nurse Kim on TikTok and YouTube. Appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much. Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan was very clear in his opening statement that he believes the strongest evidence in his case is the digital evidence, which he said has no bias. The problem is that that evidence has to be interpreted by experts. And the question is, will the jury believe that they have bias? I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.